The Keep, the 1983 film released by Paramount Pictures, was also based off of a book by the same title, which was written by F. Paul Wilson, which was published in 1981. Apparently the author wasn't too pleased with the outcome of the film, and I really didn't care for it too much either. It was very bizarre and a bit kind of slow at some points. It does drag for a bit, and I just pretty much found it just all around boring. So the film does take place in World War II, set in Romania. Obviously there's this keep or some sort of a fortress. The locals are a bit weary of the place, really don't like going near there too much, although there is someone who has been charged with kind of taking care of the place, making sure nothing, too weird goes on there. Eventually we do have some Nazis that do come into the village. They decide they're going to set up shop there, and for some odd reason they decide they're going to take a few hostages. So they do take somewhat of an elderly man, sort of a priest position, as well as his daughter and a few other, assorted randoms. Eventually, during the course of the stay, we have a few soldiers that become a bit greedy or just money hungry, so they're sort of just destroying walls or just sort of defacing the building, just trying to pull things out of the wall, things of value. So obviously this is how the demon winds up being set free, and apparently it's a very formal demon. His name is Radu Malasar. So he does stay hidden for a bit. He's obviously not too pleased with the way the Germans are treating the Jewish people. So we do have a few deaths here and there. Eventually there is an attempted rape on the priest fellow's daughter. Someone eventually does manage to get her out. She stays at an inn, and apparently there are no other rooms, and she's not a very respectful lady, or a very respectable lady. So she rooms with some random stranger who has shown up in the village. So I guess just to deal with a bit of the boredom, there's a bit of hanky-panky going on there between those two. So obviously her father didn't do well by raising her. Eventually at some point the demon does sort of cure the priest fellow, so he's no longer ill, but he's basically having to do the demon's bidding as payment. He obviously feels this creature some sort of an angel or a savior as it's killing off the Nazis, but obviously being a demon he has an ulterior motive. Eventually, once our random stranger fellow hanging out at the hotel finishes romping around, he shows back up at the keep. He does his battle thing with the demon, and they're basically just sort of imprisoned back into the wall. So I guess maybe supposedly, this is just my thinking here, but obviously he's been entrusted with dealing with this creature, so maybe the whole deal with the woman at the hotel was just to leave an heir. Obviously if he didn't know he was going to be okay, someone needed to stand in line to take his place in case the next creature comes back, of course. So a very logical way of thinking if you think about it that way. I didn't really care for it too much, like I've said, although the film does have a cult following. I'm pretty sure it's not because the storytelling itself, although it is a bit peculiar, like I've said, it definitely does fuse several elements. You do have the fascism with the Nazis, but you also have some very dark gothic fantasy elements going on as well. So it definitely is interesting. It's out of the norm, which is something I generally do appreciate. I just thought the story was a bit draggy, and I really don't have an issue with stories with a slow build. It's just, for some odd reason, this one just didn't catch my fancy. But my suspicion here again happens to be the popularity of the film isn't the bad storytelling, although some films do gain popularity for that reason. I think it might actually be the fact that Tangerine Dream did the soundtrack for this film, so I think a lot of it actually has to do with the music that was used in the film. Obviously it's not traditional atmospheric, but it definitely does lend to the overall tension in some scenes. So that is pretty much all I have for you guys for today, and I will talk to you later.